Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to this hallowed meeting of Movie Club. This, of course, is the little broadcast, the little meeting, the gathering, if you will, that we do to talk about one specific movie each week. Now, this week is a little bit different. It's going to be something that we've never really done on Movie Club before, which is we're kind of talking about a movie that hasn't come out yet. We're talking about Project Hail Mary, as you can see behind me there. Now, of course, Hail Mary has not come out yet, but we're going to talk about the story of Project Hail Mary, the fascinating things, the best parts and everything in the book and all that kind of stuff. But we're also going to talk really and focus on those elements that we see transferring and translating into the movie, what parts we think they're going to keep the exact same, what parts we think they may change, how they're going to adapt it. So we're kind of talking about book and movie kind of put into one. And of course, we couldn't do a Project Hail Mary discussion without the guy who got me turned on to Project Hail Mary in the first place. Robert Meyer Burnett is, of course, going to join us here today. Rob, how you doing?
Turned on is right. No, it's true. I mean, John, as I've told you, this was a book that I received from Amazon. I obviously love The Martian, and I kind of liked Artemis, but I got this book and I read it in one sitting. I sat
I was going to
down.
ask, this was the book that you said you literally sat and read in the first time you cracked it open.
I cracked it open. We have a little, like an island in our kitchen, and I was just sitting at the island and I started reading, and this first of all, I love any story about space and space travel. So, but this book did for me in science fiction what Stephen King did for horror. Stephen King sort of took horror out of the mountains of Carpathia where Dracula lived and put it in. He put horror into suburbia, into the ordinary. And this book did a beautiful job of taking Ryland Grace, who was a scientist but became a school teacher, a fairly normal human being, and injects him into this cosmic story of wonder and saving the universe. And I just found that concoction, that heady concoction, irresistible to read. It was like having your favorite like sugary drink that's good for you. Somehow, and you can't get enough of it. And I was so locked in. Elizabeth kept going, do you want to like move to another room, like sit on the couch or something? I'm like, no. I didn't want to move from that spot. And I had a couple mason jars full of water, and I was just going. And I read that book in one sitting.
Okay.
And
big jar of just Granny's iced tea.
No, none of that. No.
I still remember us sitting in Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, you and I, during the Amazon presentation, and they started off with Project Hail Mary. And I remember at this point, I had not read the book or listened to the audiobook. And by the end of that presentation, so it was my first exposure to it at all. I knew nothing about it. And by the end of that presentation, I've said it before, my jaw was like agape. Like I couldn't believe it. And I've been dying. And I immediately, like shortly after that, after we got back from Las Vegas, I got the audiobook and I went through it for the first time, and I've gone through it 3 times now. And my wife fell in love with it and all that kind of stuff. And it is amazing to me how thrilling the book is. When you really think about it, it shouldn't be, and yet it's a one guy. There's no villain per se, much like The Martian. Andy Weir has done this great job of creating these stories that are thrilling, edge of your seat, exciting. No villain. Unless you want to count Astrophage as a villain. I mean, what do they say about, like, there's always an antagonist, but the antagonist isn't always a character. It can be man versus himself. It can be man versus environment. It can be man versus man. But, normally you get a villain per se. Neither The Martian nor Project Hail Mary has a villain. And yet they're two of the most thrilling, exciting, amazing movies. And so let's start talking about the story. And guys, here's how it's going to go. For those of you joining us, by the way, hey guys, good to have you here. The way it's going to go, Rob and I are just going to talk about this for the next 20 minutes or so. And then we're just going to take your questions. If you have a question, observation, or a thought, go ahead and use the super chat feature and send it in, and we'll get to those in about 20 minutes, half hour, and we'll go through those then. So Rob, right away, very early in the book, they establish that this is being told non-linearly. You're going to be jumping back and forth as the story progresses in the present. We're going to be getting the story starting at a certain point in the past and progressing as well. I am not normally a big fan of that format, to be honest with you, but it was perfect for Project Hail Mary. And, the whole idea, the opening of it reminds me a lot of the opening of Bourne Identity, where you start Bourne Identity and it's just in the middle of the ocean, some guy floating in the middle of the ocean. And this one, Rylan wakes up. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know who he is. And it just starts with mystery, which, kind of then carries throughout the whole thing. But I thought that story mechanic worked really well. So my first question to you is, how did you feel about that story mechanic? And then, and this is going to be our theme throughout the rest of the video, is how do you see them? Do you see them using that same mechanic in the movie? Do you think they're going to tell it more linearly? What do you think they're going to do?
Well, what's interesting is when you're dealing with those two different scenarios, time is passing in a way differently in each section, because with the scenes when you're in the present where Rylan Grace and Rocky are on the ship, you're almost watching things not quite real time, but as they're unfolding. And, going back and things have already happened because Rylan wakes up and he's already, you're already in space and he has to figure out, well, where am I? What am I doing? And it immediately puts you into a situation where you as the reader, and I guess as the viewer of the movie, are going to ask yourself that question. So you're immediately intrigued. So I really do love when you open a story in midstream and you kind of don't know where it's going to go. And sometimes it'll just keep going and it won't have a flashback structure. But in this case, I really love the juxtaposition of being on Earth and meeting all these characters, because being in the claustrophobic environment of space, it's kind of interesting that you go from that claustrophobic environment back to the quote unquote real world or Earth, which really opens up the story more, because and in this particular case, I think it works really, really, really well, because you remember all the time what's at stake. You remember that, the Stratt character is like, look, if this doesn't work, we're all going to die. And you're constantly informed about what is this man fighting for, and he's fighting for all of us and everything that we're going to lose. So I think it worked really well in the book, and I would imagine it's going to work the same way in the film. So I'm looking really forward to it.
Let's talk a minute then about the characters. Okay, so let's start with Grace, who's of course the first character we meet. He is the main protagonist of the story. One of the things there are two distinct things that I really love about the character. Number one is that his superpower is he's educated, I've talked about this with you a lot. I love movies like The Martian and Project Hail Mary that really elevate the idea of, hey kids, stay in school, be smart. You can be Rylan Grace. You really can. Like when they say in Batman, anyone can be Batman. No, they fucking can't. They really, really can't. But anybody could be Rylan Grace. Rylan Grace wasn't born with a bigger brain than anybody. Rylan Grace didn't. He was just a guy who loved learning and learned and loved science and stuff like that. And that, much like Mark in The Martian, it becomes, that's what saves the day. And I love that about him. And it's always about his problem solving and his approach to all that kind of stuff. So that's the one thing I love about the character. The second thing I love about the character is he's actually a deeply flawed character. He's not the ladies' man. He doesn't have a world of friends. He actually struggles in his life on Earth a little bit, whether it's, being chased out of academia because of his thesis about all life needing water, or whatever it is. He kind of puts himself in a little bit of a safe shell and not get himself out there a lot. Of course, one of the big twists in the movie, if not the big twist in the movie, is to find out that he never actually wanted to go on the mission, all that kind of stuff. And yet he's empathetic. He's sincere. He's brilliant. I mean, so you put all those things together. He's just an incredible character. And it's hard to make an incredible character, Rob, when for a good chunk of the story, you don't have anybody for that character to play off of. Right? It's a lot of it's his own internal monologue. So your thoughts, what did you think about, as a guy who reads a lot of books, your thoughts about Grace as a character?
I totally agree with you. And one of the things that this book does, and I've heard that they applied this to making the film, but Grace is he talks to himself a lot, and you because it's in the book, you can hear his internal monologues and things that he thinks about. And he's a funny character, a flawed character. But I've heard that, for instance, in the movie, they gave in the way they did the film was they had a voice. They had the head puppeteer of Rocky ended up voicing Rocky in the movie, because when they were making the film, that puppeteer and Ryan Gosling developed a great rapport, and they improvised a lot of things together that apparently made the film. So what I love is that's kind of the kind of character Grace is. And remember, he's in the book, he had this promising career as a scientist, but then that it didn't work out. It didn't pan out. And he's gone back to teach kids. And that's noble, but you realize that he's kind of a broken man in a way. And I've always loved characters like that. He sort of gave up his own personal dreams, and now he's living a life that he thinks is okay, but I think he wants more from himself. And I think that's a big part of, I mean, he doesn't in the book, he kind of, he gets coerced, in a way he gets coerced, he gets drugged up and they send him. But it's, I don't know. He's just a great character.
So let's talk about Eva Stratt. When we get to her character in the book, I thought my initial impressions of Eva Stratt was just going to be a monotone, kind of flat kind of character. But she's kind of the low-key MVP of the story of Project Hail Mary.
100%.
And, somebody in the live chat just before the show started made a great comparison. One of you guys in the live chat there mentioned that Stratt is very comparable to Luthen in Andor, Stellan Skarsgård Luthen. And I thought about that for a second, and I thought, that's actually a really good observation. It's very cold in many ways, but really just, he's trying to save the universe. She's trying to save the world. She's a good person, but she's got to do what she's got to do to save the world. By the way, X-Men Superfan sent in 5 gift memberships. That's awesome. Thank you, X-Men Superfan. Nice. And my favorite scene with hers is after she's already showed her hand. I'm forcing you to go, whether you want to or not. I'm going to drug you. I'm going to put you on that ship. And I believe you're a good person, so you're going to do your job when you get there, even though I'm killing you. She goes into this story when talking to him in his prison cell before she ships him off about, before I did this, I was, what she said, she studied history or something. And she's like, all of civilization is about, all wars are about one thing, food. They've always been about this. And this is what's going to happen on Earth. And because I know that's what's going to happen on Earth, I'm going to do whatever it takes to save it. And then she drops this one line too, where she's, Grace asks her so what do you think you're going to do? And everything once this is all over. She's, they're probably going to arrest me. I'll probably be tried. I'll probably get convicted, but it's not really what she's worried about. She's worried about saving the world. And I thought that scene in Grace's prison cell before getting, involuntarily forced to go on the Project Hail Mary mission, I thought that scene by itself gave her so much depth and gave us such a great insight into the character, especially since everything up until that moment has been very cold, very calculated, whatever. I love her scene in the courtroom when the software makers are trying to sue her and get a stop. And she goes, No, here's my free pass from the UN. Here's my
Yeah,
full pardon on everything from the president. I'm only here as a courtesy to you. Now screw off. Let me go do my job. Like
right.
I love it. She's amazing. Anyway, your thoughts about Stratt?
Well, it's the same. I think that kind of a character is if you're dealing with saving mankind and saving the planet, they've made her, she's the biggest hard ass there is, but she's not a terrible person. She's a beautiful person on the inside, but she's taken on perhaps the most difficult task any human being has ever taken on, that you are going to stop at nothing to save mankind. And the people, you already know that the people that you're going to deal with are going to hate you. And they're not nearly, because they don't have the whole picture. They don't know everything that's going on, and you have to accept that. And you've decided to give up the sense that, human beings always want to be liked, but you have to give that up, because none of that matters if the world dies. And I love characters like that. It's funny because we talked about Paradise. The character of Sinatra in that show, the woman
Yes, reminds me a lot of Stratt.
yeah, is very similar. And it wouldn't surprise me if when they were creating that show, they were thinking of Stratt when they created Sinatra, because she's basically doing the same thing. Although I think the Sinatra character was not, she's a little bit more nefarious. But the Stratt character, and the thing is, you really love this character. I mean, you love her because we love her. We might not love her if we met her in real life, but we love her in the context of the story. And that's another thing, is that both our principal characters are good people. They're maybe the best of people. And yet they have to be who they are in order to save all of us. And I love that.
So,
and that's what makes the story so delicious.
So let's talk now for a few minutes about the translation, going from the book to the movie. I think there's one thing we all agree upon that they're going to change from the book to the movie, which is it's not going to be internal monologue.
Right.
It's not going to be, hey, I'm Ryland Grace. I bet you're wondering how I got here. No, it looked like they revealed in the trailers that his internal monologue in the book is going to be conveyed to the audience through video diaries. It looks like they're going to be doing that, which is kind of the same mechanism they used in The Martian. But I think they're going to do that here. Have him, and they might even figure out a way. Here's one of the things I think they might change a bit. They might even figure out a way to have two-way communication. In the sense that, he sends off a message and he's, instead of waiting 3 hours like Mark had to wait in The Martian, he's got to wait, 3 weeks for something. I mean, I don't know if that's what they're going to do, but he's definitely going to be doing a lot of video communication. There's two big things, though, that I got to ask you about. If you think they're going to keep the same,
right,
or do you think they're going to change? One of them is this. We've already kind of gone over it, but one of the key twists in the story of Project Hail Mary is us ultimately discovering that Ryland Grace said no. He would not go on the mission. And they ultimately had to force him to go by drugging him and throwing his body on the ship. Do you think they're going to keep that in the movie, or have it be a little bit more traditional heroic story where he says, for my kids, talking about school, I'll go? What do you think they're going to do there?
I think they're going to keep it. I think they're going to keep him getting drugged.
I agree.
Because that's kind of a bummer. And I think when he says he's not going to go, it ups the stakes, because in a way he could be bitter about it, but he wouldn't have gone any other way. I think what you're asking is, and that's another thing that Stratt had to do. She couldn't accept no for an answer, no matter what, because he is the only person that can help. And it shows what lengths that she had to go to save us all. And in a way, since these are characters that are apart from one another, and he's probably, the way that I would play up the resentment he has for her, but eventually he's going to have to come around, because you can't have like a reconciliation moment between them directly. Like, she can't give him a hug. And I think that's a big part of the story. Yes.
I agree, and I'll tell you why. Because one of the other big climactic moments of the movie gets kind of neutered if you don't, because that twist shows us a Ryland Grace who's a good man, but when it push came to shove, he wasn't going to sacrifice himself to save the world. He send somebody else, send somebody else. But by the time we get to the third act and near the end of the movie, near the end of the book, he does decide to sacrifice himself to save one person, to save Rocky. Because he knew by going to get Rocky, that's it. At some point, he's going to run out of food and he's going to die. And so without that decision, without that action, that twist where we find out he refused to go because he was afraid, it kind of is the feeder. It's what gives life and air to that choice later in the movie
100%.
To abandon his trip home and go save Rocky instead. So I think you're right. I think they're going to keep that.
Yeah, and I think that's vital, and that's such a great, can you imagine how that'll play in the theater, for people that don't know the story, when he does make, I mean, that's going to be a fist bump moment, when, the end of Breakfast Club, and Judd Nelson goes, yeah, when the whole audience is going to do that when he decides, because it's a one-way trip.
Yeah, because you got to get to me burgers.
Yeah.
Okay, was that brings us then to, because we could sit here for 3 or 4 hours and talk about this, but we're going to try to keep it relatively short. Rob, when I was on the road, when I was listening to the final 2 hours or so of Project Hail Mary, and I got to the end while driving, and I was on the road, and I immediately texted you as soon as it was done. And I believe my text to you is, in the movie, they're going to change the end. And I've been saying that on the show, but obviously for non-spoiler reasons, I haven't been revealing. So, of course, in the book, he ends up on, what's the name of Rocky's world? Arid?
Eridani.
Eridani, right.
Yeah.
So in the book, he ends up on Rocky's planet in a controlled environment, eating me burgers, and he's a hero. He's a hero to both Arid and Earth and all that stuff. And I reached out and I said, okay, here's what I think they're going to do. I do think they'll keep the ending as it is. They'll keep it. They're not going to change it. But I think we're getting another scene. Because I said, I think for a movie audience, it's going to be very satisfying to see him, even if it's for 5 seconds, some kind of heroic welcome home. And maybe he sees a now fully grown up, one of his kids from his class. Because remember, in the book itself, Grace says, yeah, I may go home. Not right now.
Right.
But I may eventually go home. So so the book itself opens the door for that. It totally opens the door for that. So you could have the exact same ending. You just tag on this extra, like literally last 30 seconds. I could see it now. He's talking to Rocky through the glass on Arid, blah, blah, blah. And then it fast forwards a couple of years and it says Nassau, modern day. And like somebody looks at the screen and says, sir, we have an unidentified object entering our whatever. And then you just cut to the ship and it's Rocky and Grace. Rocky brought him or whatever, something like that. I just really see them doing that. And when we heard the first reactions, which are glowing, like best picture of the year kind of reactions, quite a number of them mentioned this movie kind of has multiple endings. And so that really made me think they're going to do it. Anyway, you and I had discussions about that months ago. How do you see them handling the end of Project Hail Mary between the book and the movie?
Well, I think that we're going to see the ending from the book. I mean, very much so, because it's such a great, I love that ending when, he's back to teaching. He's just teaching a different a different
Different students.
different students, but the teacher student relationship is the same, which I thought was great. And I look, if they don't go back to Earth, or if they do go back to Earth, we could also see Stratt somehow. There's some kind of communication between the two of them, because where I don't know what that, if he doesn't come back, maybe he sent a message, when he sent back the Beatles, the Predator, the Beatles, and there would be something that would be played. I don't know what that would be, because I remember in the book they find out that the Earth's, the luminescence of our star has gotten back to normal, and that's how they know Earth was saved. But that
his
is,
message
like you said,
did get the Beatles made it back. They were able to decipher all of it, and they were able to save the star.
Yeah, that's how the book ends. But I think there has to be some flip ending of it, something on Earth. It depends how they incorporate Stratt into the story, because I think you want you want to see an ending somehow with her as well.
I just think that's the difference between the mediums, though, right? Like in the book, it's perfect. But I was just thinking, if I'm in a movie theater and watching this on the screen, I would kind of find it dissatisfying if the last we saw of Stratt was the conversation, the great scene of her having the conversation with Grace in the prison, right? I want 1 second of follow-up. I want one thing of seeing that Grace is celebrated as a hero on Earth, or even 1 second of them actually getting a look at Rocky through a message. Like, wait a minute, you ran into aliens? Like, I want to see somebody react to that. In the book, I didn't need it, but I think on the movie theater,
I think so too.
It. All right. Well, listen, we've almost been talking about this for 45 minutes already. That's why I feel like we could sit here and talk about this for 3, 4, 5 hours. But guys, we are going to spend the remainder of our time now, as we always do with Movie Club, just taking your observations and questions and thoughts and theories. So we're going to go over, the super chats are still open, by the way. We're going to go over now and take a look to see what you guys have been sending in. So let's get over to it. And we are going to start off with, I think, Wayne. Yes, Wayne writes, I think they're going to cut Stratt's court scene and the two scientists talking about making love. They might change the names of the Beatles too. I don't think they're going to change the name of the Beatles, because that's just too integral to what they're doing. I got to disagree with you. I think Stratt's court scene is one of the best scenes in the book.
Yeah, I do too.
And it really establishes she's pretty much the most powerful person on Earth right now, because everybody's given her that authority. And I think that's the scene that really drives that point home. And the reason I think they'll keep the scene about the two doctors, the two scientists talking about lovemaking, stuff like that, is without that scene, the explosion just becomes a hurdle in the story. The explosion is supposed to make us feel it, like these characters died. And without us having, and I think that conversation kind of, now I get it. They got to cut stuff out of the book. They 100% have to, but I don't think you cut that out, because again, it turns that explosion from a heavy emotional thing that they're trying to deal with while dealing with the practical, logistical problems. It turns it into just another hurdle. So I think they keep them. Rob, do you think they cut either of those scenes?
I think the courtroom scene, it's such a great character moment. I mean, from an audience standpoint, it's a really satisfying scene, because you think that something's going to go one way and it goes another, because she's like, no, I don't think so.
Yep.
And those are great cinematic scenes. That's a great moment where she establishes her clear dominance. And it's just, for us, it's a satisfying scene. It's those scenes in movies are fun to watch, and it's going to be fun for her to play. So I definitely think that the lovemaking scene,
just them talking about, I mean, not showing them, but just them talking about. No,
that's what I mean. I mean, it's interesting, but I don't think we really need that. I think the thing about, like, The Martian, there's a lot of stuff in the book, The Martian, that was cut out, but they really distilled it down. Like when you see how he survives, And there's a lot more of that in the book. But in a movie, you don't need to see that kind of repetition. You understand they focus on the fact that, hey, he was able to grow things on Mars using fecal matter from the rest of the crew. That in itself, that isn't a clever, ingenious thing that a botanist would do to save himself on the red planet. And you don't need a 5 more examples of that. You pick the best one, and then you use that because you've only got so much time. So I think that it'll be a truncated version of these kinds of things, but the courtroom scene is a big scene for Stratt. So I think they have to keep that.
By the way, just side note, obviously I saw the presentation at CinemaCon first, but after listening to the book, how good does it look like she's going to nail Stratt, the woman they cast?
Oh, yeah, the woman from Anatomy of a Fall. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's perfect. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, Alex von Gollum. Right, speaking, we were just talking about this. Man, the way Dr. Stratt made decisions, resolutions, reminded me of Luthen. What a complex character. Yeah, I was telling Rob before we started, I saw that one come in, and I was telling Rob before we started, like that is a great comparison. A character who maybe loses a little bit of their empathy and loses a little bit of what maybe on the surface makes them look human for the sake of the mission, but you realize by the end of it, they are doing what they have to do to get the job done. And I think the comparison to Lumen is very accurate. I even compare her prison cell scene, Ryland Grace's prison cell scene, and that speech a little bit to Luthen's, "I burn my life for sunrise I know I'll never see." Like it reminds this. I mean, Luthen's speech is better, but it reminds me a bit of that. So yeah, that's a really good comparison there, Alex. All right. Alex also writes in. He says, Ryland being asked to join the ship's crew reminded me of Frodo's decision to take the One Ring, with the twist that he didn't volunteer and was kind of forced to. Him realizing he wasn't brave enough was deep. Rob, that's going to be a really interesting scene in the movie because, and I hope it's kept in there somehow, some way. It's not just us as the audience finding out, the drama of us as the audience finding out that he said no. He finds out he said no.
Yes.
Because up until that moment, he thinks he volunteered to come. And that is going to be an incredible opportunity, I think, for Ryan Gosling to really show his dramatic chops. And I am dying for that scene. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. That's, I never thought about that. Yeah, I mean, imagine what these are all great. I can see them, how they would be visually presented, in terms of it's far more interesting that you find out that when he discovers it, he said no. That's a great way. That's a great way to go.
Yeah, that's going to be an awesome scene.
Now I'm just getting more. We're seeing the movie a week from Friday.
We're seeing 10 days from now. 10 days from now, you and I are going to be sitting in a movie theater watching this. And it can't get here fast enough for me. All right, let's keep going on here. Next one comes to us from Mattaween, who writes, I hope they put in the scientist who designed the Beatles. He's a cool, quirky character. By the way, he's a Canadian character too. In the book, he's Canadian. This hyper-positivity viewpoint on how astrophage was a gift from God and his puns about Beatles songs would make a good scene. You know what? I 100% agree. I fear he might be one of the lambs sacrificed. Because remember, if you really did a direct translation of the book, this movie's going to be about 7 hours long.
Right. Yeah.
And I agree with you, Mattaween. I hope they leave him. He's such a great, quirky little character. And you need somebody who, it also kind of shows that Project Hail Mary was a project of the world. Whatever, he's a Canadian scientist. He's this quirky guy who made the Beatles and why they're there. And it introduces philosophy into it. It's like, yes, these things are threatening the existence of the world. But if you're a person of faith, what a gift to bring the world together, what ways we could exploit this for energy for the world. He's just a cool character, but I fear, Rob, I don't think he's going to be in the movie. I hope he is, but I know, listen, I haven't looked at the IMDb page. For all I know, there's already an actor credited to the role. I purposefully didn't go and look, but I have a feeling he might get cut out. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the thing is, I love it. I keep going back to The Martian, which has the extended version of The Martian and the theatrical version. The extended version's like, I think it's like 10 minutes longer. And what they added was a lot of the other scientists and the people that worked at NASA. And obviously Drew Goddard wrote both scripts. So I think he will incorporate as much of the scientific elements to Earth as he possibly could, because it gives the film scope, whereas again, it compares and contrasts what it's like for Ryland to be in space alone on the Hail Mary, as opposed to all the hullabaloo, because you've got aircraft carriers and stuff. So maybe we'll see him. I just don't think that we're going to be spending a lot of time with those characters. But I think we'll have a coterie of scientists, like a Greek chorus that are, that Stratt leads, but they're always like throwing out funny asides to her, and she's bouncing off them of what they can and they can't do. So there's going to be some of those characters. I just don't know how many.
Right. Okay. Next up, we've got Madeleine again, who writes, also, this book is a love letter to STEM. It absolutely is. I hope they have enough of Grace's inner dialogue. It'll be all spoken out loud about the scientific process in the movie. I hope everyone brings their kids to see this and read the book. Again, Rob, this is one of the big things to me about The Martian and Project Hail Mary. These are real heroes that we can bring kids to, that we actually want them to be inspired by and want to emulate these heroes on the screen, right? They're not going to develop superpowers. They're not going to have Odin bestow upon them a hammer forged in the heart of a dying star. They're not going to be exposed to gamma radiation and get super strength. But these are characters and heroes that are very grounded in a way that I hope he's right. I hope these are characters that become inspiring and inspiration to kids and children, maybe even adults. So I agree with Madeleine on that. That's again, but we've talked about that many times, but yeah, Madeleine, I 100% agree with you. Absolutely. All right. Declan writes, the film directors confirmed the ending would be the same as the book. If you haven't said already, what's your idea for the alternate ending? No. You got to hear how they worded what they said. And I believe, Rob, that the ending in the book is going to be in the movie.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be stretched out an extra 2 minutes.
I could absolutely see that happening. What I was worried about when you first brought that up, that you were suggesting that they would remove, Grace teaching. Like
ending up on Arid and I think they do all of that. I think they do all of that.
It's so great,
Yeah, it's awesome. Again, I just think they're going to use that one line in the book. Maybe someday I'll go back as a way that, it might even be a post-credits scene, where they end it right where the book ends. And then 30 seconds into the credits, a ship approaches Earth, and we got a Ryland Grace on there, maybe to a hero's welcome. I don't know. I think they're going to have the ending from the book. I just think then they're going to add a little something to it. Just a minute, 2 minutes. That's all I think. All right. Next up, we got Chocolate Thunder, who writes, in the trailer, they show Rocky in New York City. New ending?
Well, I think they're in front
isn't
of
it on the billboards?
Yeah, he's showing you visuals, like they're probably he's sharing Earth with Rocky. I think it's just they're just sitting looking at a screen of some kind.
You know what is another possibility? Remember I said it would be fun if they could figure out some way that he was able to get communication back to Earth, and like Earth sees that he met an alien, and maybe like in The Martian, where people gathered in Times Square, New York City, and they have the images up on the big billboards or something. I don't know, but I don't think maybe I missed it, but I don't remember them showing Rocky in New York, but we'll see. All right. Next up, Spencer writes, I really hope to see Stratt courtroom scene. Again, I think it's a must. I think you got to have, I think that's like Rob said, I think that's such a character defining scene. I think that's really important. All right. Scuba Steve writes, Maude Garrett talked with Ray Porter on YouTube. Great. Who's Ray Porter?
He's the actor that read the audiobook.
Oh, is he? Well,
Yeah.
that makes sense because I know Maude, ever since, back in the AMC days, I know Maude does a lot of book stuff now. She does. I think she's actually got a YouTube channel I think she does. I think she's got a YouTube channel dedicated to book stuff. So that would be great. I'll have to go check that out. I'll definitely have to go check that out. All right. Next up. And Dino writes, the big twist of being forced away and yelling, "You're murdering me," hit me like no other book since the Do It to Julia scene from the book 1984. Yeah, man, they made that scene in the book visceral. Like there was no quiet acceptance of what was happening to him. It was like screaming until the end.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in reality, I think that also made it hit home and feel more real. I mean, you understand he knows if he gets put on that ship, he's dead.
Right.
He's dead. They're killing him. I mean, he's not wrong. He's screaming, "You're murdering me."
Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Well, I mean, and that gives something. I mean, we would all feel that way. You can't. You have to play those colors for the character to be who they are, because all of us. The great thing about a protagonist like Ryland Grace is he is all of us. When we watch, everybody watches. Part of the reason I love the book so much is I totally identified with him, and I would have. You can't. You're killing me. I'm this is it. And I don't want to have that happen to me. But it's I think that's what makes part of the story so compelling.
I agree.
And you feel, and there's another thing that happens. I always love the whole revelation that Rocky's entire race doesn't know what radiation is.
Oh, yeah.
And when you find out that he doesn't understand like why everybody else died. And because obviously we know everything about radiation from the sun and the way it affects our cells and it made sense. I'm like, wow, something that's so vital to our understanding of how the world works. And Rocky comes from a planet that they don't, because they're so different from us, that the concerns that they have they're just not the same biologically to us.
Yeah. And
I always thought, what a great way to have a difference, a true existential difference. It's not just the way we look or what we're made out of, but the fact that the physical universe itself affects us differently.
Well, you know what else is interesting? Is that it kind of also, because I thought about this as a kid too. It also kind of looks at the way it's like, if there was another civilization out there, they would progress technologically completely different than we would.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, Rocky's civilization was far behind us, but in other ways, they were far beyond us.
Yes.
Like a great example of that is like the juxtaposition in the book is radiation and what is the name of the metal that Rocky uses?
Yeah.
Erudite or something.
Yeah,
adite, Statolite or whatever.
Yeah, they use his metal to make the chain that they get
all that stuff, right? This incredibly strong, powerful xenonite. Thank you. The Mataween in the live chat was pointing out it was xenonite.
Yeah.
So that's the juxtaposition showing this. In one way, they are so far behind us, and in other ways, they're so far beyond us. And so like that was a really neat illustration of that, because we see Rocky in the ship and all the technology and what he's able to do, but then we find out there are things they're completely oblivious to and have no idea. You know what I also love? Sorry, side note, we'll go on with the questions here in a second. Just the whole notion when Rocky's like the humans poop. I mean, it's like, this is like, why do you guys have to eat so often? You're so inefficient. So inefficient. Anyway. All right. Let's keep going here. Next up, we got Calamity J, who writes, I love the book and I can't thank you both enough for getting me excited for the film. I'm looking forward to seeing it in IMAX 70 millimeter. Well, Rob, I mean, like I've had a lot of people write to me to say they only found out about the book because of the show, but I found out about it because of you. Would you consider yourself an evangelist of Project Hail Mary to people?
Yeah, but I mean, Yes, but I think that when a book, a book comes out and it becomes sort of everybody who reads it, John, surprisingly, people in the science fiction community, like diehard science fiction literature fans, kind of frown on this book because it's populist. It doesn't there. You think about like these gigantic space opera books like Werner Vinge's A Fire Upon the Deep, or Ian Banks' culture novels, or Dune, or Foundation. These are very highfalutin stories, but this is a science fiction story that's written for the every person. And I like both. I'm a child of two worlds. But when you read this kind of a story, people that wouldn't necessarily call themselves science fiction fans, or they haven't read a lot of science fiction literature, they can read this book and totally understand it. They can feel the awe and wonder of the universe, of the cosmos. They can grapple with some really interesting scientific and science fictional ideas without it being overwhelming. There's not too much jargon. There's not too much the writing is so crisp and clean that anybody who likes a great story, who might not necessarily think they're going to like science fiction literature, could read this book and love it. And that's why I think it's really important. In a way, everybody likes science fiction movies, but books sometimes are an acquired taste, especially the more well-known science fiction genre novels, because they're really heady. You have to have grappled with science fiction concepts before to get through a book like that. But this book is for everybody. It's for young, it's for old, it's for men, it's for women, however you identify, and you will understand this story, and you can't help but enjoy it and be moved by it.
You know what this is, because this just happened. This is what Project Hail Mary is. This is perfectly a representation of Project Hail Mary. At the SAG Awards the other night, Harrison Ford got awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award. And he said something that I think perfectly applies to Project Hail Mary. He said to the actors, sometimes we get to make entertainment, sometimes we get to make art, and sometimes we get lucky enough to do both. And I think Project Hail Mary is both. I think it's great art in the fact that, it's got the sci-fi, it's got all that kind of stuff, and yet it's also just a very entertaining kind of story. So I think it's a little bit of both. Anyway, okay, let's get, just so you know, guys, I have turned off the super chats, just so you know, but we will get through the rest that are here. Let's see here. Where are we at? We're at Sam Champion, who just sends in a $10 badge to be supportive. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that, man. Wayne writes, Taumeba astrophage. Can't wait to see these aliens. It's funny you mentioned that. Before we started the stream tonight, I was like, Rob and I were talking. I'm like, what's the name of the stuff they come up with to eat the astrophage? And we found out we realized it was Taumeba. In the newest international trailer, they actually show, I don't know if you saw the new international trailer for it, Rob.
I don't think so. Did it just drop today?
You get a quick glimpse of the chain pulling up the probe to discover Taumeba. It's such a great, and the discovery of Taumeba and how they discover it is such a great example of, they just, to quote once again The Martian, they scienced the shit out of it. They just used science and figured it out. And I can't wait to see that scene in the movie. That's going to be so good. All right. Next up, Raza writes, just bought the book and audio after you guys recommended. Not really read sci-fi before, but love the genre. I'm so excited to read it before the movie comes out. It's so terrific, Raza. I'm glad you did. I hope we're not... Well, you know what? Even though you're finding out everything that happens in it, the book is going to be amazing to you regardless. And I'm glad you got it, and I'm very excited about you reading it. All right. Isaac writes, Sandra Hüller, who is incredible in Anatomy of a Fall, Academy Award nominee, perfect casting for Stratt, based on character, most likely to be nominated. If I think that's a very astute observation, because Rob, I think if somebody from the future came back, if like me from the future just came back and said, okay, John, I just came back from next year's Academy Awards, and one actor in Project Hail Mary gets an Oscar nomination, I would guess it's her. My guess right now is going to be her for Best Supporting Actress. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that would be the obvious, considering she has, but I think Ryan Gosling might get one as well, only because he's essentially acting by himself with the Rocky's puppeteer, and it's always difficult. I remember thinking about Sam Rockwell in the movie Moon, where he's basically all by himself,
right?
Or other versions of himself. It's hard to do that. It's hard. And I've seen Ryan Gosling. He's been doing a lot of press for the movie. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of different interviews you can watch of him. And he's talked a little bit about that he developed this relationship, just him and I forget the guy's name who the puppeteer's name. I'm sure we'll learn more about him in the coming days. But I mean, it was, from an acting standpoint, it's a very intimate experience. When, can you imagine when you're trying to simulate zero gravity and you're looking at this rock puppet and you've got one guy voicing the puppet? It's tough. That's tough for an actor to get into character and to stay there that way, especially when you have the technical issues, the fact that you're not even looking at another human being necessarily. You're focused. You're talking literally to a rock puppet and a disembodied voice. And I just think that, looking at how his performance is from the trailers, I could see him getting that nomination, because that's a really hard part to play.
All right, let's move on here. Next up, Wayne writes in, and Wayne writes, do you think we'll see Antarctica getting nuked, or the whole panels in the Sahara Desert? I think they jump straight to them having do/die mission. Okay. Understanding that you do have to cut a lot of stuff out of the book for it to fit into a 2.5 hour movie. But showing the progressive of what the world is accomplishing and doing, I think that's a key element to the story. Now, Rob, what I don't think they're going to do is spend a lot of time. Like, I don't think they're going to go to the prison, meet the doctor who comes up with the theory.
Right, yeah.
But I do think we're going to have a scene where it's just you go from Ryland in present day back in time again, and they're on the ship and they're getting ready to blow the nukes, and they're going to explain in like a 2-minute scene why they're releasing all the greenhouse gases to try to keep the earth as warm as possible, blah, blah, blah. And I think they'll do, so I think they're going to cover the Sahara Desert thing turning into a giant astrophage factory and the Antarctic nuking. I think they're going to cover all that, but I think all of that is going to be covered. What is like 18 minutes of audiobook time is probably going to be covered literally in about 2 to 2.5 minutes. So I think they're going to keep it. What do you think?
Yeah, it'll probably, I can imagine it being some kind of a montage, where you're watching all the scientists and doing everything, and they'll have some great needle drop on the scene, some great source cue to play, something that because that's an exciting scene, and it also adds a lot of, you realize the extreme nature to what they have to do to save everybody. It's not, because you've got to give something cinematic and visceral that the audience can really go, oh my God, they're serious. And it really, I think that is absolutely going to be in there.
And I think it shows too, like, Stratt is responsible for more than just getting the Project Hail Mary. She's responsible for, how do you save the planet from this? And it's multiple things she needs to do, including the whole thing with the desert and the Antarctica. So I think they keep it. Although just shrunk a bit. All right. Next up, we got Kevin Fraser sends in a super chat badge to be supportive. Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate that. Alex Von Gollum writes, since the book intersperses levity with dire situations, drama, Lord and Miller are 100% a match to direct the movie. I'm sure they nailed it. Rob, I was really excited to hear Lord and Miller were doing this. Although we've never really seen them do something like this. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they navigate. Now, again, Andy Weir laid out a great foundation with the book. And you're right. It's a great at interspersing the heavy drama with the levity and the humor. It's a very funny book.
Yeah, it is.
So it's going to be interesting to see how Lord and Miller are able to navigate the heavier, more dramatic things about it. How do you expect them to do with that?
Well, I think that the juxtaposition, it helps with that because the situation on Earth is dire, and I think that knowing that they've did a lot more improv. I mean, it, by keeping the stuff with, like, obviously if you're watching a human being acting with, which is what is essentially a rock, that is inherently sort of silly in a way, and by making those scenes more humorous, it sort of dials down the silliness, what could wind up being really silly. And I think that using humor between Rocky and Grace is what it keeps those scenes really fun and interesting, but it also lets the audience know that, yeah, there is an inherently whimsical thing happening between these two characters. And whereas on Earth, no. And I think the tone of the movie is kept from spinning off into becoming a full-blown comedy by what will be happening on Earth. And I would imagine it's going to get increasingly more difficult. I have to show you something.
Don't tell me you have a Rocky hot toy.
No, but my friend who designs toys in Portland, Roberto Suarez, made me this, and it's got the Hail Mary insignia on it. And when you open it up, now it doesn't. He made this before anything from the movie came out, but he made a Rocky, and the Rocky and it's magnetized. He has a post. So here is the Rocky.
Because there are illustrations that people made from the book years ago, and that is very accurate to those illustrations.
Yeah. And he made this for me, and I just thought this was the coolest thing. I'm sure someone's gonna have a toy. And then he used things from the book, and he printed out, like, so this looks like it's from the ship. So it's got a Hail Mary icon. Yeah.
That looks really good. By the way, somebody in the live chat just reminded me of this. Hey guys, listen, there's like 500 people watching this live as we're doing this live stream. Do me a favor, guys, every single one of you right now, take a second, click the like button on this video so we can get the good word of Movie Club out there. Just every one of you watching right now, just take a quick second, click the like button. And there's no reason we shouldn't have 500 likes on this video with everybody who's in here. All right, let's get on now to the final question that somebody sent in before we turned off the super chats. The Fergus Review channel writes, I hope this movie far outperforms Hoppers. Why? What difference does it make? Who cares if Hoppers makes $2 billion? Why? Like, I just hope this movie does well. And, Rob, that's the funny thing, because I have my concerns with how many people are actually going to go out to see this. I think it's because it's going to be limited, because most people have not read the book. And I worry that I think we saw an opening weekend projection of what, about 50 million?
45 to 55 million.
45 to 55 million.
I read a projection, it was 50 today.
Yeah, which is, I mean, for a lot of movies, that's pretty good. But for this, so I have my worries about how many people go to see it. I certainly hope, though, it does better than what we're expecting, because this movie could be absolutely, this is going to be a Best Picture contender, I think.
I think so too. I've been saying that, since last year. And I do think with everything going on in the world today, I think this is the right movie for the right time. I think this is a film that celebrates two vastly different kinds of people coming together to do great things, overcoming their vast differences. And if there was ever a time that Americans and the world needed a story like this, I think it's now, because ultimately it's about how a whole planet can come together to achieve a goal. And it's about how two very different people can surmount their differences and save the world. And I think that if there's what a message we could use today.
Somebody in the live chat just put in a really good thought too. Like maybe this, I mean, it's not going to be a $2 billion film, but maybe this could be the next Avatar. Avatars do not have traditionally great opening weeks, especially the first one. Does not have a great opening weekend. And then hopefully it really picks up with word of mouth from there and just goes on. Well, Rob, We originally planned for this to be a 1 hour video. It's now 1 hour and 15. And again, we could probably sit here till midnight talking about Project Hail Mary. But that will wrap up this session of Movie Club. Club adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here and joining us for this. A big thank you to all you guys who sent in the questions and comments. Number one, because you gave us great insight and thoughts about Project Hail Mary, but you also supported this channel, and all of us here, thank you for that support. We will, of course, do Movie Club again next week. I don't know which movie it'll be yet, but I'll let you guys know in the next couple of days about what movie we will do Movie Club about next time. Big thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett for joining us here. Thanks for as always, my friend. Guy, seriously, can you imagine? It's only 10 days. 10 days till we see this movie.
And it's, you know, it's one of my most eagerly awaited films of the last couple of years. So I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to be a new science fiction classic. It's interesting. You know, Ryan Gosling, to me, has a really interesting career trajectory. And the fact that he took on Blade Runner 2049, which you never know, but it was Denis Villeneuve. I mean, I think that film is absolutely spectacular.
Oh, it's so good.
And he's incredible in it. And it's and to have him do this where he gets to play a completely different kind of a character. The man is fearless, and he's a producer on this film, and he became a producer on this film back in 2020. So he was one of the primary movers to get this movie made in the first place. So kudos to, you know, we love him like McAdams loved him too.
Well, then he's got that. Then he's got Star Wars Starfighter. And yeah, he's got an interesting couple of years ahead of himself. Anyway, guys, that will do it for Movie Club. Thanks a lot. Make sure all you guys come back and join us for the John Campea show tomorrow. We'll look forward to seeing you then. That'll do it for us for now. Thanks a lot for being here. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye.